And here we go.
Welcome to the Great Work Insights Podcast by the O.C. Tanner Institute, the show that features the people, the professionals, the thought leaders, and the coolest companies. And now your host, the man navigating the discussion about the culture, the organized chaos, and the best practices that compel great work, Todd Nordstrom.
I want to start today's show with a few questions for you, the listener. Just listen to these questions and see if you have any specific reactions, emotions, or maybe you have the answers. Question number 1. Do people born in other countries and cultures see the world differently than you do? Think about that for a second. Question number 2. Do you see the world differently than someone from a different socioeconomic class? Consider that one for a second. Question 3. Does your age have anything to do with the way you approach work? Noodle this one hard. You can compare yourself with a person in a different age group, or you can compare yourself to yourself when you were a different age. Now think about this last and most important question. Question number 4. Is our working world too politically correct, or is it not politically correct enough? Think about that hard. Now imagine all the other listeners to this show and be rest assured that there's someone who passionately disagrees with your answer to number 4. These questions are just the tip of where this conversation could go, of course. I could toss out a million questions directed at all of us that reveal mankind's differences, both physically, like race, size, sex, hair color, eye color, and foot size, the list could go on, or culturally, like religion, tradition, norms, perceptions, political views, and so on. In fact, hop on Facebook. I will right now, in fact. Let me click here and scroll down until you find an opinion that someone could find offensive or disagreeable. There it is. I'm scrolling. I got down to the 9th post on Facebook, and it's something very, very political that could offend someone. What's the point? Well, my guest today will surely make his point. It's what he's known for. Today, our guest is a man who has become widely recognized for, well, let's just say, not holding back when it comes to showing and teaching people how to become successful. In fact, our guest will quite adamantly call political correctness a cancer, saying that it has created a society that is insincere, oversensitive, and underachieving. Those are some very strong words. Please welcome to the show Larry Winget, often referred to as the pit bull of personal development. Larry has spoken to nearly 400 of the Fortune 500 companies. He's the best-selling author of 6 best-selling books, and you may recognize him from his days of hosting his own television show on A&E, or seen him as guest on shows like Dr. Phil, CNN, Fox Business, Fox News, The Today Show, MSNBC, and many more. Larry, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate you having me. And believe me, the words that you credited me with there, those are pretty calm for what I normally say.
Well, we'll dive a little bit more into that. You've obviously been extremely successful with your books. I'm sure many of the listeners today will recognize at least a few of your titles, like "Grow a Pair," or "Shut Up, Stop Whining, Get a Life," or "You're broke because you want to be," or I love this one, "Your kids are your own fault." But I want to talk to you about a recent audio series you created focused on political correctness. Well, actually, it's political incorrectness. Your audio series is titled "The Politically Incorrect Success System." What is it? Why'd you do it? And what inspired you to create this series right now?
Well, I'm real clear about who I am. What inspired me to create the series was that a company came to me and said they'd like to pay me. So that's always good inspiration for writing a book or recording a series or whatever. When you're going to get paid for it and that's your job, that's inspiration. Mm-hmm. What inspired the content, though, and it's interesting, I actually just recorded a new video for myself this morning that will go out under the 5 friends that I do with some of my buddies about why I do what I do, why I write what I write, and so forth. And it comes down to the fact that I am reactive. I am not proactive. I react to what's going on in the world. It's the reason I wrote each one of my books. I was reacting to what was going on in the world, and that chose the theme for me. That's what happened with this series, The Politically Correct Path to Success, is that I'm reacting to what most people say it takes to be successful. In fact, that's the basis for my entire career. I looked around at what everybody was saying and everybody was doing and said, most of that's just a total load of crap. I don't care whether you got a positive attitude or not. I care about whether you get the work done. And we got people right now in the business world saying you got to love what you do every single day. Absolutely ridiculously stupid idea to tell somebody you got to love what you do every single day. That's only being said by people who aren't working very hard. Because if you really work hard, you're not going to love what you do every single day. It's going to be work some days. And it's going to be horrible. And it's going to be miserable. You're going to hate what you do. You're going to hate your customers. You're going to be sick and tired of looking at your coworkers and your employees and your boss. That's the real world. And so I approach things a little differently than most people. I think loving what you do is a bonus. I think being happy at work, fine. That's a personal choice. I think passion is the dumbest idea we've ever sold people, and it's probably the number one reason most entrepreneurs fail. So I approach things just a little more directly and a little more, in my opinion, practically than most of the people out there teaching this stuff.
Larry, I heard you give a speech once where you talked about the secret to success being work, and you talked about you actually talked about what you were just talking about, and you said quite frankly that you love about 100 hours of your work a year. Talk about that.
Well, it's true, and at this point, I don't even have 100 hours of it. I do what I do for a living, which is standing on stage, giving a keynote speech. I do that, stand on stage, about, at this point, 75 hours a year. I got to travel a couple of hundred days a year to make those 75 hours happen. I love every minute of standing on stage, and I hate nearly every minute of the 200 days I'm out there traveling. You got to put, and if anybody travels very much, it's not a pleasure anymore to go through TSA and get on an airplane and deal with the delays. You get to the hotel and they've walked your reservation, and UPS didn't get your books there on time, and on and on and on and on, and the mics aren't going to work, and they didn't do a sound check, and and it's just it can be a disaster when you're on the road all the time. The key is I love my 75 hours on stage enough to be willing to put up with that. Now, what I contend is that everybody in business today loves something about what they do, and that probably makes up about 10% of what they do. But see, you got to love the 10% enough to be willing to put up with the other 90% that you may not like at all. That's fine. Just don't pretend that you love every minute of it. You're selling yourself a bill of goods. And see, that's the problem in society. We've told people, we have an entire generation, an entitled generation right now, that absolutely believes that they are entitled to the right to be happy every minute they're on the job. That if they're not being fulfilled, that if it's not feeding their soul and finding their bliss and making them feel good in every single way, that they've been short-served. And that's not fair. We need to tell people the truth. They're mostly bad days when you're going to work. It's not always going to work out. You're going to experience a lot more failure than you ever are success. Get used to it.
Yeah,
so we're not telling folks that.
Search for happiness, making people miserable. Hey, I want to talk to you more about why you say political correctness is a cancer. I hear a lot of people they'll blame everyone else. They'll blame other generations, like the millennials, for example. I hear people blaming certain political groups. I hear people blaming the education system, the whole concept that every kid gets a ribbon after a game or a trophy or what have you. Who's to blame for this concept of political correctness in the workplace, and who's to blame for this sterilized culture we've created?
Well, we're to blame. See, I believe that people will do whatever they can get by with. We've got to stop letting people buy with so much. And what has happened in the workplace is that we've let people get by with too much without saying, I'm going to call you on that, and that's not going to be allowed. We've compromised our core values to the point that that we are no longer willing to take a stand for fear of hurting somebody's feelings, for fear of getting pushback. And when that is the case, when you compromise your core values to the point that you're not willing to take a stand for them, then you become way too tolerant. And the level of tolerance that we have right now has gotten to the point that we allow ourselves and encourage others to be offended by everything. You know, when the Oxford Dictionary, one of their new words is the term butthurt. That should tell you just how far it comes. And the definition of butthurt, and, you know, I believe we live in the United States of butthurt at this point. I really do. But the definition of butthurt, according to the dictionary, is being overly annoyed at a perceived insult. See, there wasn't even a real insult involved. It's a perceived insult. And we become overly annoyed by that. And so that just it's to the point that, you know, I say it's the most castrating thing that ever happened to our society, is that we have dumbed down clear speak for when we say, you're doing a bad job. See, you're not allowed to say that anymore. You're doing a bad job. Mm-hmm. Well, that offends my tender sensibilities. When you said, listen, a couple of years ago I did a story on the news about a principal that came out and said, these kids, now he's talking to high school seniors, have been truant and they're not going to be allowed to walk across the stage, and he reads their names out loud. And the kids filed a lawsuit, and the principal lost his job. It was an assistant principal in California, lost his job because he hurt their feelings. He hurt their feelings. These are 18-year-old kids. We've got kids dying to protect the rights of these others, and yet they can't stand to have their own truancy called out in public. It's ridiculous.
It's a bit off topic, and I want to get back to your audio series. But I was just looking at your website now, and I'm a bit in awe of the fact that you have spoken to 400 or so of the Fortune 500 companies, and I'm no offense to you, but why you? What's going on with your message that you're so wanted by big business to come in and talk to people?
And what's amazing about that is I don't really talk about business principles. Mm-hmm. I've written a lot about business principles. I know a lot about business. One of my bestsellers was a straight business book, but I talk to people about being better people. You see, I actually believe that business gets better when the people in the business get better. And that's what I talk about, is how people should take responsibility, learn to be more flexible. Change is going to happen. Don't whine, suck it up, go to work, sort of along the lines of my new book, Grow a Pair. And somebody asked me what I did the other day, and I said, you know, it's really pretty simple. I say what the CEO would love to say, but their HR department won't let them say. And that sort of sums up what I do, and I believe that's what makes what I do attractive to companies and associations, is that here's a guy, whether everybody agrees with him or not is not going to be the point. The point is he's willing to say his truth. Mm-hmm. We see authenticity there. What I've discovered in the speaking industry is very few people believe what you have to say or even will listen to what you have to say, but they will all listen to see if you believe what you have to say. And so it's attractive for somebody to have a clear stance that unapologetically states their core values and beliefs and can back that up with solid facts and figures. You know, and I did a speech last night, and I asked them how many of them wanted to be average people, just average guys, and how many thought of themselves as an average guy. You know, most of the hands went up, and I said, well, if you're average in America, it means you're fat, broke, and stupid. And that's true. Mm-hmm. So while what I say may not make you happy, it's the truth.
Yeah, statistically,
and so my goal is to make people go, I don't like it, but he's right.
Hey, I have a question for you. A lot of listeners to this show, they're leaders of organizations, they're HR leaders, they're managers of teams and employees. A lot of them work for big companies, and they have, I don't know how to call it, pre-established reputations that go along with their roles. For the people, and I'm sure you get approached by these people all the time, for the people listening and wishing they could be more authentic, more of themselves at work, and not have to tiptoe around their own reputation, What's your advice? Where do they start?
It starts, first of all, with clarity about what you believe in. And I have already mentioned core values. I'm real clear about my core values, and that way it's easy for me to be uncompromising on those core values. And that's what the book Grow Up Here is really about. I ask people to, first of all, establish what you believe in, that you are absolutely unapologetic about, and you'll never compromise. Now, the sad thing is, if you walk up to people on the street, and you can try it, I did, and say, tell me 5 things you really believe in that you'll never compromise on. And people will look at you, as they say, like a dog looking at a ceiling fan. People have no idea what they really believe in that they'll never compromise on. So when you establish clear values in your own personal life, it makes it easy to decide what you will put up with, what you won't put up with. It gives you clarity. That provides focus. And you don't get distracted by all the silliness, by the political correctness, by all the things that are going on outside of you, because priorities are determined by values. And so the first thing I tell people is to get clear on your values. I would tell a business the very same thing. What are your core values? And that's not a mission statement. Mm-hmm. What will you absolutely not compromise on? If it's customer service, then okay, fine. I want to make sure that you're really walking the talk on that and know what that means. So whether it be a business or whether it be an individual, establish your core values. In fact, that's what my new book is going to be about, is how we've corrupted our core values.
Yeah, they've become signs on the wall and fluffy words to the most part. How often do you find businesses that are like you called it, a dog looking at the ceiling fan, when you talk to them about the organizational core values?
You know, I don't really get into that a whole lot on the stage right now, because I go back to people having core values. And a core value for me is honesty and integrity in all that you do, and doing the right thing, whether it's convenient or the cheapest thing to do, or whether it humiliates you or not. You got to do the right thing, and we all know what the right thing is. I remind people of these basic principles, and then I show them how that works in areas of leadership and dealing with your employees and even dealing with your kids, and I go real broad with that. So you can take a handful of core values, stand on stage and talk about the importance of being responsible, and talk about how that relates to achieving your quota, how that relates to being on time and doing your job, what you're paid to do, and working together, and how it works once you go home. You can take your core values and drive it broad like that, and everybody in the audience, see, I give audiences a little more credit maybe than a lot of speakers do. I think they're smart enough to listen to that and go, man, that works in my life, and it works when I'm sitting next to Joe Bob back there in the corner and he's being an idiot. These things all apply. I can see that. And they can take those things that I talk about and use it not only in their personal lives but in their professional lives.
I'd love to see pictures, because I bet of the audience members, the people who come into your speeches thinking that they might be offended are probably the ones that become your biggest fans at the end. Is that true? Yeah,
and I've been doing this a long time for all kinds of groups all over the world, and so I don't get a big thrill anymore. I mean, I've kind of been there, done it. You know, it's like the Rolling Stones playing I Can't Get No Satisfaction. They've done it a million times.
Yeah.
And so the thrill for me is to watch an audience physically move in their chairs, that when I say something that I know has just slapped the hell out of them mentally, and I can see them in their chairs pull back, and then within just a couple of seconds, watch those same people that have pulled back lean forward, maybe look to the guy sitting next to them and say, yeah, I hate him, but I know he's right. And I get a lot of that, and that's a real feeling of satisfaction to me, because I believe that you can't help people on the path to getting better until you give them, first of all, a harsh dose of realization about where they are right now, and that's sort of what I do. And I can get by with it because I do it in a humorous way. It's very entertaining, and it's one of these things. What's he going to say next?
Yeah, absolutely. Larry, I'm a big fan. If listeners want to learn more about you or your new audio series, The Politically Incorrect Success System, or any of your books for that matter, like your new one, Grow Up Here, where's the best place to find you?
Well, I'm easy to spot. I really am. You can go to LarryWinget.com and get a bunch of free videos. I do a weekly series called Ask Larry Anything. I'm getting ready to shoot one of those in a couple of minutes. You can just go to Amazon and look up any of the books, look under my name, and they'll all be there along with the audio series that you're talking about. But I would suggest people go to my website for some direction. Also, you can follow me. I'm big on social media, as you know, and I'm very interactive. I got a lot of people. I don't let them get by with anything. And my goal every morning is to provoke thought. And you were just saying, if you're looking for something to offend, I'm one of the best.
Also, you mentioned earlier your 5 friends with you and Sanborn and Randy Pennington. Talk about that a little bit.
Very few times in life can you come down where you really have 5 solid friends that challenge you, disagree with you, call you on your stuff, laugh with you, drink with you, where you've been together like that for 25 years. And there are 5 of us, Joe Calloway, Scott McCain, Randy Pennington, Mark Sanborn, and I. We've been friends for over 25 years, all operating at about the same level, but with very different paths that we've taken in the speaking industry. We're buddies. We take on a topic in a blog that comes out every 2 weeks, but the topic always gets 5 very unique points of view wrapped around it. So it's interesting to a lot of folks. There's something there for everybody. Mostly it's just good to work with people that you respect personally and professionally, like the 5 of us have grown into for over 25 years.
Well, Larry, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Happy to do it. Thank you for having me.
Feeling inspired, motivated, encouraged? We want to hear from you. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. And be sure to visit octanner.com for more podcasts and how you can inject great work and employee recognition into your organization. Now go out and make a difference within your organization.